Hi guys, how's it going? I'm MrSoupy. In this video, I'm going to show you guys how to make warlords 2 weapons, or rather, what we did, me and Geobox, to make weapons in warlords 2. This is not exactly the same way that Hypixel weapons were made, but it's the same process and the same idea. They just had their little slight deviations or whatever when they were making their cool weapons with whatever, Fell Flame, all that good stuff. But I'll show you today how we did it in Warlords 2. All you need is to make sure you have Blockbench and a painting tool. It can be whatever, but I find paint.net the easiest. It's not a website, by the way, it's an actual app called paint.net. You can download it for free. Both Blockbench and paint.net are free, so don't have to worry about that. To get started, open paint.net, and before we make our canvas, the thing you need to know is the size of Warlords weapons is about 32 by 32 on average. Like most of the weapons are 32 by 32. So when we are making our weapon, we want to make sure that at the end the texture is 32 by 32 to make sure it's not like too high quality or too low quality. Paint.net, you should go ahead and make your canvas with a radius that's kind of close to 32 by 32, but it doesn't have to be exactly. For example, it could be maybe like 48 by 64 or 52 by 70, something that's kind of close but not too far off. If you want like a little bit more room to make your weapon, then yeah, you can adjust as you need, but the end goal is you want to try and fit it all in a 32 by 32 box. And even in case your weapon might be too big for one 32 by 32 box, which you might see later, then we can make 2 of them, so it'll be okay. Next, you want to make sure you have a model image of your weapon that's pretty clear of the weapon you're trying to pull off. You can just find an image of it online or whatever. It's probably just going to be an image or a screenshot. You can put that image in paint.net if you want, or you can have it on like a second monitor, or you can have it on your phone, just somewhere where you can easily see it, so it'll help you out making the weapon, because you're basically going to copy off of that image. So you can begin by making the outline of the weapon in your image. I would suggest not using too many colors here, or you can just use like just black to start and just make like the outer shape of your weapon. Then once you're done with the outline, you can give the areas their proper colors, and then you can fill in those colors to make it look full. And then once those colors are complete, then you can give them like a texture, make it look smooth, make it look more realistic. If you struggle with the texture part, then you can also use existing Warlords weapons as a reference, or you can also just copy some of their textures and just replace the colors. More of that is shown in this video. The thing is though, even if you're bad at drawing, which I have never been good at, the texturing phase isn't really that hard and anyone can really do it. All you have to do is just take your time. If even I can make a decent texture at first, with enough time, anyone can do it. You just need to take your time. If you're really struggling, all you have to do is just try and find some other existing weapons, look at the way that they are textured and try and like copy the same way, for. You can either just copy it completely or try and like improvise and like copy some and then continue the rest on your own, something like that. But you can use other textures to help you out with your own. You can go in a texture pack and go open all of that up. Any weapon that you think might work in game, you can find the texture in the texture pack and open it, paint on that, and use it to help. So once you are done making the texture, you want to make a new canvas that is 32 by 32. It has to be exactly 32 by 32. Make a new one, so just make like a new, make it in a separate tab. Make sure it's transparent. I also forgot to mention earlier that you should probably make your whatever custom size canvas that you're making your weapon with, it should be transparent. All you have to do is just select the whole box and press Ctrl X. It'll cut the white part and it'll make it transparent. Make the 32 by 32 transparent as well. And then the idea here is to try and copy paste your weapon into that 32 by 32 box. Now for most people, depending on the size of your weapon and how much canvas room you had, it's probably not going to fit in there. So what you can do is you can break it up into little pieces that make sense. For example, in this video we had a little baby sword dagger thing, right? And the sword really has like 3-4 parts on average. It's like I don't know what the bottom of the sword is called. I just call it the ball sack because it's the easiest. For this video I split it into 3 parts, which was the ball sack, the handle, and the blade. You can do that for your sword, or you can also do the ball sack and the handle, and then you can do like the hilt of the sword, and then you can do the blade. And you can also split the blade into 2 parts or 3, depending on how long it is. When you're done splitting up the weapons into 2 parts, or however many parts you need, if it all can't fit into one, or it's too complicated to fit into one, then you can always make another 32 by 32 box and you can use both of them. But I would suggest for now just trying to make it all fit into one 32 by 32 to make it easier. You can save the 32 by 32 either to a folder, or you can save it to your desktop. You can call it whatever, and I would prefer you probably save it to your desktop. But if you want to save it to a folder too, that's fine. You can call the file whatever. Just know that if you use a space, you should replace the space with an underscore. It makes it easier a little later. You still have your original drawing of the weapon that's like whatever size, that's close to 32 by 32, but not 32 by 32. That we don't actually need that, but I would highly recommend that you still save that, because even though we won't need it, it will help you when you make the model, and it will kind of like assist in like, okay, well what is the 32 by 32 supposed to look like at the end, you know? That's what it'll help with, even though we don't actually use it for anything. So you can save that too. If you really think you don't need it, sure, go ahead and delete it, but I would recommend you save it. So before we continue to block bench, your texture part is done. We do have the texture ready. That's in the 32 by 32. That is the texture we use. Before that, we need to go to Minecraft and find a parent model for your new weapon. So what this means is that we want to find the weapon that is pretty similar to how you want your weapon to look in game. For example, if you want your weapon to be positioned similarly to something like Flame, where it's kind of a little bit back towards the screen and straight up, then you would use the Flame as a parent model. If you want it to be forward a little bit, you can use something like the Venom Strike. You can use the Orc Axe. If you want it to be backwards a little bit, you can use the Demon Blade, the Slayer on Warlords 2. This helps with two things. It helps with when you export the model from Blockbench, and it also helps for your perspective, which is basically what I was just talking about, how you want your weapon to look in game. So when you're doing this, you can just open Minecraft and go to either Hypixel, or you can go to the Warlords 2 server, or you can go to single player, put on the pack, and just look at the different weapons and see which one you think is closest to what you want. Because whatever you pick is probably going to be exactly how your weapon will be positioned. In this video, we use the Golden Gladius, or I use the Golden Gladius. So whatever weapon that you end up choosing, you want to find the actual item for it. So what you can do is you can turn off the texture pack, and then you can see which item is in your hand. For Golden Gladius, it was the pufferfish. It'll be different for the weapon you choose, or if you choose Golden Gladius, it'll also still be pufferfish. Now we need to find the model file for the pufferfish in the texture pack. So what you can do is you open the texture pack that you were using, you go to Assets, Minecraft, Models, Items, and then you can go down there and find pufferfish, or whatever whatever item that you are going to use. But instead of using the Hypixel texture pack, or whatever texture pack you're using right now, I would heavily suggest that you use the 128 times texture pack by GMBox, because if you use a model file from this texture pack instead of the Hypixel ones, you will have a much easier time finding the things you need to find in the JSON, because we are going to go into the file and take some things out of it. And if you use the 128 times texture pack, it's much neater to find everything you need than compared to Hypixels. So I would suggest that you use GMBox's file. Both texture packs contain the same information. Every model has the same information inside, but GN's texture pack basically has a much neater layout. So model files have .json at the end, and texture files will have .png. So make sure you also have Notepad to read the model files. I don't think that'll be a problem for most people. Just finding the model file for your just finding the JSON file for your parent model, we're gonna call it the parent model. Finding the JSON file for your parent model is good enough, but if you also want to find the texture too, you can find the texture. Usually it should probably be named the same thing as the item. So if your JSON file is pufferfish, then the texture file should also be something pufferfish. Like it might be like pufferfish unwrap or pufferfish something, but it should be similar to pufferfish. However, this is not the case for all of them. Right. Not all weapons are named the same as they are as a model. For example, we have, what's a good example? I think it's the Diamond Spark, right? The Diamond Spark is an axe. The Diamond Axe, yeah, I don't have to check. Diamond Spark is a diamond axe, so let me find it. If we go to Diamond Axe, we find out, you can also, when you open the JSON file for the Hypixel weapon, so it looks like this, it's a mess. But if you look at the top line, you can find what the texture name is. You can see here, it's Noxy Thundersword, not Diamond Axe Unwrap or something like that. So it would be a pain to find, but in case you need to find it, you can do that. So to begin in Blockbench, start by dragging the parent model into Blockbench from your desktop. Make sure you drag the files from the texture pack to your desktop or somewhere that's outside of the texture pack, so that it can be imported into Blockbench, because you can't import it into Blockbench directly from the texture pack if you use something like a zip reader like WinRAR. Once this model file is in your texture pack, you can copy all the cubes on the right side of the screen. Then go to the plus to create a new folder of a model. Choose Java block item, and then when it's created, you can paste the blocks from your parent model into this folder. It should have the same shape. It's also okay to leave the parent model untextured. It doesn't need to be textured, but if you want to see the texture, you can click import texture on the bottom left area or left area, and then you can choose the texture file from your desktop. You could drag it from the texture pack onto your desktop and then choose it from your desktop. Once you select it, click import file, and then you should be able to see your model in full color. So now we have the parent model's block set in a different space, so you can go back to your first tab where the parent model originally was. You can delete all those blocks, and now you can use this space to make your custom model. The parent model is there for you to use and check if you need to. You can also add in any other weapons from the game that you think you might want to look at while you are in your modeling process. Like for example, in this video I had both the Golden Gladius, which is the parent model, and I had the Vorpal sword from Warlords 2 to use in this video. So to begin the modeling process, you can start by either adding a cube on the right side of the screen, I think it's bottom right, or you can copy paste a cube from an existing model, like either the Vorpal sword from here or the Golden Gladius or whatever model you are using. You can copy paste a block that exists. The menu for modifying the cube is near the top, but here are some hotkeys to make life easier. If you press V, this is to move the cube in any directions. If you press S, you can resize the cube in any direction. If you press R, you can rotate the cube in any direction. And on the top, next to the rotate tool, there is a pivot tool that will determine like where your block is being rotated. If you put it in the middle of the block, then it'll rotate the block in place. If you decide to start with a fresh new cube, you should make it much smaller than how it starts out. Try and reduce this cube to the same size as this. Now to help with that, you notice that if you just click, you don't really get a lot of options, right? So if you add a shift to your clicking, it will reduce the amount that you shrink it by. If you add control, it reduces it even more. And if you highlight both of them, it reduces it the minimal amount. So that will help with you trying to make it smaller, right? So this works for both resizing, moving, and I think rotating as well. In case the parent model's texture is still in the bottom left, you can go ahead and delete it, and then you can add the texture that you just created there instead. You can just simply drag it in from your desktop or import it. And once it's there, you can drag that texture again onto the new block that you just made. Once you drag the texture onto your block, the UV menu showing your texture should appear. There will be a light blue selection box that shows where your texture is being read on the face of the block, so you can move this around and change its shape as well. If you notice as you're changing around the blue selection blocks, the changes are only on one side of the cube from when you first applied the texture to the cube. To fix this, you can press apply to all changes, which is underneath the UV menu. Then you can go back to each face and edit each face exactly how you want it. But if you want the same color to be around the whole block, then just click apply to all faces. When you're starting with your custom model, on your first block, you should start from the bottom of the weapon from wherever your texture is. So for example, this weapon, I start near the ball sack of the weapon, the very bottom of the ball sack, and then I work my way up. The goal is to try and make the length of the texture being read and the block length as similar as possible. You want to try and make it about the same, like width, about the same length, about the same height. I would say it's more important to keep the height as accurate as possible than the length. And the width you actually don't have to worry about until the end, but I'll just make sure you try and keep the height of the weapon as accurate as possible. So when you are done with one block and there's a texture on each side of the block, you can right click it, duplicate it, and then drag it out from the block upwards. And then you repeat the same process for the next portion of the texture. So this process may be confusing at first, and it most likely is, but after messing around with it on your own, you'll probably understand the process going on here. You don't have to do exactly what I do for this model making part. You can get as creative as you want to, but in case you are unsure or you are still confused, you can just follow what I am doing with this texture and how I am like creating the model from bottom to top, because it's probably the simplest way to understand. So you can go on making your model. I don't really have to explain much for this, just go ahead and make your model from from bottom to top. But one quick tip is in case you run out of room vertically, then you can scale down your weapon. How you can scale your weapon is you select all the cubes you made on the right, click transform, and then scale, and then you can use that menu to scale down your weapon. You can also change how many axes are selected. If you select it a certain way, you can make it scale just vertically, you can make it scale just horizontally. You can scale everything together, so you can mess around with it. Most likely, if you're using this, you need to scale it vertically, so you can disable X and Z, and then you'll be able to scale vertically up and down. I would heavily advise you to save this step for when you are done or almost done with the model and you need to scale down for room, because when you scale early, it might mess up your process of duplicating and adjusting new blocks as you go. So I would advise that you scale down your weapon as late as possible. So once your model is fully textured, you can go back and add some detail to the sides if you want. Depending on how simple your weapon is, you probably won't even have to do this, but for higher quality weapons, I really suggest you go back and try and like make it look a little more realistic and give it like some higher quality. So once you're done going through your detail and now you are totally finished with your model, you want to save it twice. Save once as save project as, and then when you save project as, you can name it whatever you want. And the other save option you want is export as block item model. But before you do this, you should go to the display tab, click GUI, and then you can just randomly move any of the little options that you see, like transform, all that stuff, rotation. You can just move any of it randomly. Just move something in a random direction, left, right, it doesn't really matter, just move something so that there's some change and it's not the original settings. What this does, it makes our life a little bit easier later. We don't use any of these menus though for making the display. You can see that there's a third person and a first person tab, and we're supposed to use that, but we don't use it because that menu is intended for higher versions and it's not really intended for 1.8.9. So if you try and use this for a 1.8.9 file, it's going to look like wonky and backwards and not proper. So you can save. When you use save project as, it's just saving your project in general just to be safe. But the important part here is exporting as a block item model. Here it's not okay to name it whatever you want because the name is also important. The name of the export will be what the model replaces as an item in game. You can go into Minecraft and find the item that isn't taken and then look up its Minecraft ID name. The name of the item in game is not always the same as the Minecraft ID name, so you need to look up the ID name. And then once you have that ID name, then you can use that to name your export file. You want to make sure it's exactly the same as the Minecraft ID name, because you want this export file to replace the item in game. So in this video, the example I used was melon seeds. Melon seeds was not taken, so I looked up the Minecraft ID for melon seeds, and it's just melon_seeds. It's pretty simple. For other items, it won't really be that simple. Like some Minecraft IDs for some items won't be like close or pretty close or exactly the same as the name for it in game, so you might have to watch out for that. But once you find the name, you go ahead and export it with that name to your desktop. After you export it, it should be a .json file. You can open both that new .json file and your parent model's .json file. So an example, in this video I had the golden gladius. Go ahead and open the JSON file for the pufferfish, which was the model for the golden gladius. Open both of them. Open them with Notepad. In case it's not the default option, just select it when it gives you the menu to like what do you want to open this with. If you use the Hypixel model file, this is what it will look like, and this is why it's a mess. This is why I suggested that you use GMbox's texture pack, because GMbox's texture pack, it's the same thing, but it's a lot like neater, it's better organized, and the way Hypixel did it, they read it a different way, so in here it's just a complete mess, so we don't want to use that. In the JSON file that you just made with the export, On the top lines where you see the name of the texture file, add a item slash in front of the texture names for each line that has one. This tells us where the texture file for the model will be read in the pack. Once you make that change, scroll down to the very bottom where you see the display tab with the GUI. We messed with the GUI in Blockbench so that it would create this little tab at the bottom. So now we have an easier time copy pasting. What you want to do is you want to go to your parent model's JSON file, go to the very bottom as well, and then you copy the display tab information you see from that JSON file into your new JSON file. And then you completely replace the old display with just the GUI with the new settings. I have both the first person, the third person, and the GUI settings. Once you're done with that, you can save the changes. You don't have to make any changes to the parent JSON model. It should be just a new one you made. And then you can go ahead and drag the JSON file and the texture file of the weapon that you just made into the texture pack that you will use. So the JSON file goes into models and items in your texture pack, and the texture file goes into textures and items. Make sure you save it in your texture pack, and then you can go ahead and launch Minecraft. You can find the item that you use for the model. So for me, I would find the melon seeds. Whatever you use, go ahead and find that, and then you can go ahead and look at it. You can compare it with your parent model. You should see that at least in first person and third person, it's shaped like in just about the same way that your parent model was, or it's in like the same area, something like that. There's also a pretty high chance that you made some sort of mistake, or you want to fix like some small details, like maybe it's too big, maybe it's too small, maybe it's flipped sideways. But the most important thing is that your weapon is in a similar position and it has its texture being red. If the texture is not being red and it's purple black boxes, here's a quick explanation for that. From here, you're probably gonna have to do a lot of back and forth. Also, first things first, if you get purple black boxes, it is most likely because you did not put items in front of this, or you just forgot to drag your texture in the pack. So in this video, my weapon was flipped sideways, and it was also a little bit too big. So to fix problems like this, you can go back into Blockbench. You can select all the cubes of your new model you just made, and then paste it in the tab where your parent model was from earlier. When you do this, you can compare how your new model looks to your parent model exactly, and you can probably find the mistakes that you made. You'll probably see what needs to be fixed. Like in this video, I could see that it was clearly flipped sideways compared to the Gladius. So either the scale tool or rotating should probably fix most of your sizing problems. You can just scale it depending on how your parent model looks, or you can rotate it to the same direction. You can also choose to compare your new model to other existing models. Like here, I also compared it to the Vorpal sword. You don't need to do that, but you can if you want to, just to make sure, like, okay, like how's the length, how's the width, if you want to. But the most important thing is that you compare it with your parent model. The parent model is the one that shares the exact same settings with your new model. So you want to make sure that it's like basically aligned with your parent model, because it needs to use the same settings. Other models will probably have different settings, so if you compare it to other models, it might actually look different in game than what you see in Blockbench. So when you are done making any changes that you need to, you can save and export again. Just save project as, call it whatever, and then export again with the same name that you used before. If you save to your desktop and it gives you the option to replace the file, you can just go ahead and replace it. It makes it easier. Every time you do this step where you go back into Blockbench, make a change, and then export the file again, you have to go into the JSON file and add the item slash on the top few lines, and then you also have to copy paste the display settings of the parent model back into your new model again. You have to repeat those two steps each time you make a change, because it'll wipe it from before. So make sure you do that. Once that is done, you can drag the model file back into your texture pack again to replace the old one. You don't have to drag in the texture file again in the textures items. All you have to do is drag in the new JSON file, the model file, in there. Once you're satisfied with the changes you've made and you don't really have anything else to do, then your weapon is good. That's it. Thanks for watching. Later this week, I will have another video where I use the same process to make like an actual better, higher quality weapon than the one in this video, because the one in this video, you can clearly see that it was pretty rushed. I was pretty lazy. It looks like garbage. I just wanted to get it out quickly to use for the tutorial, because you can at least understand what you need to do with this. But I'm going to also use the same process to make a better weapon to show you how it's really done. Something like the Vorpal sword, I used the same process for it. Look at how much better that turned out compared to this little poop crap thing. So expect that video later this week. That is all for this tutorial. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you later. Peace.